Hi, my name is Mr. Kangas, and today we're going to be taking a look at Chapter 7, Section 2, solving representing linear functions, but specifically we're going to be taking a look at how to solve an equation for y. Because when you're talking about linear functions and how to graph them, we typically will create a table of inputs and outputs. Okay, x's are your inputs, y's are your outputs, x coordinates and y coordinates, and we plug in numbers for the input, okay, or the x coordinates. Remember, the reason why we're plugging in numbers for the x coordinates is because every line, curve, and wave, or in other words, every function, because functions are lines, curves, and waves, move from left to right forever and ever, but they don't necessarily move up and down. The y coordinates represent the up and down movement, x coordinates represent the left and right movement. So I can pick any number in the world for x, and it will fit my equation. I can't necessarily pick any number for y, because if my wave doesn't move up 100 paces, I couldn't pick the number 100. I couldn't pick 100 for y. So, why do you want to know how to solve an equation for y? Because y represents your output. In other words, another word for output is your answer. So if you have something that looks like this, well, if y is supposed to be your answer, that means you're going to want y by itself. Because when you input x, you want to know what y is. Now, if I input x up here, okay, I can solve that. If I input 4 for x, I can do 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11, and so I know that y equals 11. But if I input 4 here, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 4y, 4 times y. I don't know what y is, so I can't do that. So you're stuck. It makes life a lot harder on you. But if you know how to solve an equation for y, we can manipulate this equation so that it's still the same equation, but just the pieces are moved around a little bit so that y is by itself, at which point we can create a table, plug in values for x, and graph it. So by knowing how to solve an equation for y, it enables you to graph an equation that you otherwise wouldn't be able to graph. In particular, in this case, we're talking about a linear equation. So if I have this equation here and I want to solve it for y, you just have to think back to your Chapter 3, Section 5 days when you were studying two-step equations. If I had a two-step equation that looked like this, you would subtract 2 and then divide by 4. So I would have subtracted 2 from both sides. Okay, 8 minus 2 is 6, 2 minus 2 is nothing. Okay, the 2 is canceled out over here. And I would divide both sides by 4. And so I would know that y equals 6/4. Okay, or 1 1/2. Either one works, but I can solve that equation. Now, nothing has changed. You're solving for y, so we're still going to subtract the 2, but we're actually going to subtract the 2x, because 2x actually represents a number. We just don't know what number that is right now, because 2 times x gets you a number, so we're treating 2x as a single number. So since 2x is positive and being added, we would subtract 2x from both sides. Because remember, we're solving for y, so we just want to get the 2x to the other side, so we're going to move the whole thing at once. So on the other side, we have 8 minus 2x. Now, you can't subtract 8 and 2x, they're not like terms, if you remember that from Chapter 3, Section 2. But 2x minus 2x, they cancel each other out. We're left with 4y. Equals 8 minus 2x. And at this point, we want to get rid of the 4 so the y can finally be alone. So the important thing to keep in mind here at this point is when you divide by 4, you have to divide everything by 4, and I mean everything. Okay? Now the reason why we had to divide both the 8 and the 2x by 4 is because this equal sign is telling us that 4y and 8 minus 2x are the same thing. This equal sign says that they are the same, they are equal. And when I say the same, I mean just that. I mean exactly the same. For example, 4y is Justin, 8 minus 2x is Mr. Kangas, both of which represent me. Okay? So I can't divide 4y by 4. Or in other words, I can't divide Justin by 4 and not divide all of Mr. Kangas by 4. Because Mr. Kangas is Justin. Now, if I only divided the 8 by 4, then I would only be dividing part of Mr. Kangas by 4. I need to divide all of Mr. Kangas by 4. So that's why I divided both the 8 and the 2x by 4. Okay? Because you can't divide part of Mr. Kangas and all of Justin Kangas. Because Justin Kangas and Mr. Kangas are the same person. So if you're going to divide one by 4, you have to divide both of them by 4 in their entirety. You can't divide pieces of them. So everything is being divided by 4. So what you're left with on the left side is y, because the 4's cancel out. 8 divided by 4 is 2, minus 2 divided by 4 reduces to 1/2 x. We'll leave the x there. So you can actually, when you do 2 divided by 4, you don't need a decimal. Actually, it's preferred that you keep 2 divided by 4 as a fraction. Okay? And if you remember correctly, 2 divided by 4 is actually a fraction itself. Fractions are division problems. This represents 2/4. So all I did was I reduced that fraction to 1/2 because it makes life a little bit easier. Later on in the chapter, I'm gonna give you a reason why we want to keep this number in fraction form, and there's a very good reason for it. So please do not turn that into a decimal. Keep it as a fraction. And so now you can see that y is alone. Okay, we did a 2-step equation, and we got y alone. So now we can start plugging in numbers for x, solving, and figuring out coordinates for y. For example, if I plugged in 0, 1/2 times 0 is 0. 2 minus 0 is 2. So when I plug in 0, I get an answer of 2. So one of the ordered pair for either of these equations, or both the same equation, okay, is 0, 2. So that is how you solve an equation for y. If you run into a situation where you're asked to graph this linear equation, okay, then you just need to make sure that you solve it for y first, and then work on graphing it. That's it for Chapter 7, Section 2. Tune in for the next video on Chapter 7, Section 3.